So MBD, we had this really disturbing episode involving Mitch McConnell a week or two ago. We weren't able to get to it to real time, but let's hit it and talk about aging, which we've talked a lot about in the context of Joe Biden. But McConnell standing at a press conference, he's giving a statement and just stops and freezes. And this is a truly bizarre and disturbing episode. They say he was lightheaded, but it's a little that was very, very odd. I'm not sure that's what most people would do if they're feeling lightheaded. Now, apparently he's feeling better. I talked to someone who was at an event with him the next night and said he was, totally in control and all there. But he's too old to, this isn't being president of the United States, but it's still a taxing job, and maybe you don't want to have leadership elections right now, but it should be something that they do at some point. But we have this gerontocracy. Nancy Pelosi was an instance of it. She got out while before she was suffering this sort of visible decline. Dianne Feinstein, the most sad and disturbing instance, and of course we have Biden and Donald Trump's not a spring chicken himself. So what's going on here? How did we get to this place where the American political leadership class feels a little bit like the 1970s era Politburo?
American politicians stopped smoking and drinking enough to die before this sort of senility sets in. That's really what happened. We are living longer, and we are living, more and more people are experiencing this kind of end-of-life pattern of senility or Alzheimer's or post-stroke cognitive issues. And it's something we have to deal with. I mean, it's not just the U.S. Congress and presidency that's facing it. I mean, other institutions are struggling with this as well. I mean, like in the last decade or a little over a decade ago, a pope resigned, normally a lifelong office, precisely because of fears of this kind of mental decline hurting the institution that he led. And so it's something that I think Congress will eventually have to address, possibly with an age limit. We have age minimums for some offices, like the presidency itself. You could have an age limit of 75, and you could set that for the Senate or Congress, and you could phase it in over time to give people who were elected previously time to, they could be, as we say, grandfathered in to the system. But this is something we have to deal with as a society, that until there's some major breakthrough in reversing the aging of the brain or halting it at the end of life, there are people who are going to occupy these offices, and they're going to go into steep and quick decline, and it's a risk. It's a risk to these institutions.
So, Jeff, do you think that's a good idea, at least in theory, some sort of age limit?
I think there's a lot more merit to it than I ever would have believed if you'd asked me 10, 20 years ago. I can tell you that much. And I think it does occur to me, when I think through Michael's argument, which as I said, I think he's got a lot of merit there, is that these old limits were put into place in an age where people just didn't really survive long enough to suffer from advanced dementia or Alzheimer's or mental decline while in office. Very few of them did, but it wasn't the norm. And that also speaks to a change in our culture, which is, this is, again, we've talked about it multiple times around here. It's a gerontocracy politically. And that's the most depressing part about it, is that it seems, maybe because of the cultural change over generations and a sort of unspoken, we joke about it. We turn it into a joke, but, we just say like, oh, these generations always think the next generation is lame. But it's notable that neither party has really groomed successors in legislative power. I look at Mitch McConnell and I think, well, who's going to take Mitch McConnell's place? Who steps in to fill the gap? Now, the graveyards, of course, are always full of indispensable men, and things will carry on. But, you just look at the fact that we're running Joe Biden versus Donald Trump in our next election, most likely, and you ask yourself, what is it about our culture that has allowed us to just be clinging on to the aged old vanguard who are is it because they hold power, or is it because we don't have any confidence in the next generation? I think there's a reason. I don't see anybody in the next generation who's really kind of stepping up to grasp the nettle too much.
So, Charlie, what do you think of that? Does this reflect? Is it just sort of an accident that you happen to have these very old people, or does it reflect some sort of cultural change? Because the image we have of ourselves as Americans is we love youthfulness, we love what's new, what's cutting edge, and we have the very opposite in these high offices or candidates for high office.
I have a suspicion that one of the reasons that this has happened is that people don't want to go into politics because it's so unpleasant. If you're a young person, you're aware of at least two potential pitfalls. The first is that something you said online, perhaps when you were a teenager, might be dredged up, and your life might be ruined as a result. I feel fortunate that I didn't have social media until I was 20. Not because I went around saying awful things, but I was an idiot when I was 15. The other is that people will lie about you, and they could make your future pretty difficult to navigate. I've never thought about going into politics myself, partly because there are some offices I'm not allowed to hold as an immigrant, partly because I have an English accent, partly because I'm probably unelectable. But I do think about others who have told me that they have an interest in elective office, but are worried that their opponent would simply make something up, which of course happens, that would stop them in the future from being able to get a different job if they failed or left. I know politics has always been difficult, and there were times in our history when it was far less pleasant than it is now. The election of 1800 comes to mind. It really is, at the moment, ugly. If you look at the way that the left behaves and the right behaves towards anyone it dislikes, the words that it uses, the accusations that it throws around, I'm not that surprised that we don't have this solid cadre of replacements. I think the life expectancy part of this is a great point. The claim or insinuation that any group is a problem or should leave office instinctively irritates and alarms me. I'm a universalist. I don't like generalizations. I don't like it when people say, you know what the problem is? The problem is black people, old people, women, what you will. But the reason for that is that I am interested in individual characteristics and merit. And unfortunately, there are now solid universalist reasons to be alarmed at the aging nature of our politicians. That being that they just can't do the job. Joe Biden is too old to be president. I'm not saying that because he's a Democrat and I don't like him. I'm saying that because I watch him on television all the time. Dianne Feinstein is too old to be a senator. Her daughter now has power of attorney. She cannot give interviews. She cannot get through a sentence. The incident, as you say, Rich, with Mitch McConnell the other day should prompt the man to retire. And I say that as a great Mitch McConnell defender
Been
and
tremendous
a great fan of Mitch McConnell, who thinks that the vast majority of the objections that have been thrown at him on the right are nonsense.
The idea that Dianne Feinstein is not qualified to handle her own legal affairs,
Right.
but is qualified to handle all of ours is
Right. This is not a generalization. It's not a stereotype. It's not painting with a broad brush. It's not taking people's immutable characteristics and drawing horrible judgments from them. This is saying, look, there are actual people with individual names and social security numbers and life stories who we can see on our televisions are not up to the jobs that they hold.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you want to make a broad criticism, I'm comfortable with that. Now, I think it would be a mistake to say, therefore, everyone who is over a particular age is is a problem within our politics. I don't, for example, even though they're only 1 year apart, see anything that connects Dianne Feinstein to Chuck Grassley, who still seems to be completely with it.
You're right.
And I would therefore be, what's the word? I would therefore want to see some nuance in any debate over age limits. But yes, we do have a problem in this country, and a problem that should be fairly obvious now, that almost everyone who is holding the high offices in our nation is too old. I mean, the president's too old. The Senate Minority Leader is too old. Well, she's gone now, in fairness. But Nancy Pelosi was too old. The Republican favorite for the nomination is too old. Like, yes, I feel comfortable saying that we have a broad problem in this area.
So ideally, you'd have self-policing, right? The people who are getting old or realize they're getting too old and hang it up, or people around them would say, you know, we love you, but it's time to go. But this very rarely happens. It very rarely happens. I remember Bill Buckley once in a meeting with some of us is like, you know, I want you guys to let me know if my columns aren't as good as they used to be. Just tell me, okay? It's like no one was going to tell him. No one was going to tell him. And he was never going to stop, right? Because there's this aspect. I remember Jay Nordlinger, a colleague, telling Bill, don't stop, never stop, because you're going to die, right? And there is that aspect of people that are so vested in their life's work and their calling. If they give up, they stop doing it, everything shuts down. So I understand why this phenomenon is happening.